Imagine dragging someone out of the African savanna, someone who lived 50,000 years ago, and dropping them in the middle of a modern American city. Not a jungle, not a quiet suburb, Times Square, Las Vegas, a Walmart on Black Friday. Give them 10 minutes. Watch their face. Because what they would see would not just be confusing. It would be, by every standard their brain was built to understand, completely insane. And the strangest part is not the technology. It is not the cars or the lights or the screens. It is us. It is the way we live, the choices we make, the things we chase. Because when you look at modern American life through the lens of 300,000 years of human evolution, something deeply uncomfortable becomes impossible to ignore. We built a civilization that violates almost every condition our species evolved to need. Let us start with something simple. Food. Your ancient ancestor, standing in the middle of a grocery store, would not be impressed by the abundance. They would be terrified by it. The human brain was calibrated over hundreds of thousands of years in an environment where calories were rare, unpredictable, and required enormous effort to obtain. The system that evolved to handle food was not designed for unlimited access. It was designed for scarcity. It was designed to make you eat as much as possible, as fast as possible, whenever food was available, because tomorrow it might not be there. Drop that system into a country where food is available 24 hours a day, engineered by teams of scientists to be as pleasurable as neurologically possible, and you get exactly what America has. The most calorically abundant society in human history, producing some of the highest rates of metabolic disease ever recorded. This is not a failure of willpower. Anthropologist Herman Pontzer at Duke University, who has spent years studying the metabolic lives of modern hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza of Tanzania, found that the problem is not laziness or weak character. The problem is a mismatch, a system built for one world running in a completely different one. Your ancestor would also not understand why everyone is alone. In every hunter-gatherer society ever studied, humans lived in bands of roughly 20 to 50 people. Not because they chose to, because survival required it. You needed people to hunt with, to share food with, to watch your children, to care for you when you were sick, to carry you when you were injured. The group was not a social preference, it was a biological necessity. And for 300,000 years, your brain developed in that context. It assumed the tribe. It assumed that when you woke up, there would be people who knew you, people who depended on you, people whose lives were woven into yours in ways that could not be easily separated. Now, look at America. According to data from the U.S. Surgeon General, America is in the middle of what has officially been declared an epidemic of loneliness. More than half of Americans report measurable loneliness. 1 in 4 report having no close friends at all. People live in single-occupancy apartments in cities of millions and do not know their neighbors' names. They have hundreds of online connections and no one to call when things go wrong. Your ancient ancestor would not have a word for this. The concept of being surrounded by thousands of humans and belonging to none of them would be as foreign and as terrifying to them as walking into a predator's den and lying down. Psychologist John Cacioppo at the University of Chicago spent decades studying what loneliness actually does to the human body. What he found was not metaphorical. Loneliness activates the same threat detection systems in the brain as physical danger. Chronically lonely people show elevated cortisol levels, disrupted sleep, weakened immune function, and accelerated cognitive decline. The body treats social disconnection as a survival threat, because for 300,000 years, it was one. Your ancestor would also be baffled by what Americans are afraid of. In the ancestral environment, fear was a precision instrument. It turned on in response to specific, immediate, physical threats. A predator, a rival group, a cliff edge. It gave you a burst of energy, narrowed your focus, and prepared your body to act. And then it turned off. Because in that world, threats were either dealt with or they killed you. There was no such thing as a threat that lasted for years without resolution. Now look at the American fear landscape. The news cycle runs 24 hours a day and is structurally incentivized to produce anxiety, because anxiety keeps people watching. Social media is engineered to amplify outrage and fear because engagement drives revenue. The result is a population running a threat detection system that evolved to switch on and off in seconds, in a constant low-level state of activation, responding to threats that are mostly abstract, mostly distant, and almost never physically actionable. Neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett at Northeastern University has documented what this chronic activation does to the brain. Sustained stress reshapes neural architecture. It literally changes the physical structure of the circuits responsible for emotion regulation, decision-making, and threat assessment. A brain kept in constant low-level alarm is not just uncomfortable. It is a brain being structurally remodeled by conditions it was never designed to handle. Your ancestor would look at the average American's relationship with time and be equally bewildered. In hunter-gatherer societies, time was cyclical, seasonal, and governed by nature. You moved with the food. You rested when it was dark. You worked intensely in short bursts, and then you stopped. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups consistently find that actual subsistence labor, the work required to survive, averages somewhere between 3 and 5 hours per day. The rest of the time is spent in social bonding, storytelling, play, and rest. The average American works 47 hours per week, commutes an additional 5 to 10 hours, and reports feeling chronically behind. Not because they are lazy or undisciplined, but because the economic systems they inhabit were not designed around human biological needs. They were designed around industrial output. The 40-hour workweek, now routinely exceeded, was a labor movement victory in the 1930s, wrested from schedules that regularly demanded 60 to 80 hours. The human animal has been inserted into a productivity machine and told to optimize. And yet, the most unsettling thing your ancient ancestor would observe in modern America is not the food or the loneliness or the fear or the exhaustion. It is something subtler, something that sits underneath all of it: the absence of meaning. In the ancestral environment, meaning was not optional, and it was not something you had to search for. It was embedded in the structure of daily life. Every action had immediate, visible consequences for people you knew and loved. You fed your children directly. You protected your group directly. You contributed to something that mattered in a way that you could see and touch and feel in the responses of the people around you. The feedback loop between action and consequence was immediate and human. Now look at the structure of modern American work. Economist David Graeber spent years documenting what he called the proliferation of meaningless jobs, roles so abstracted from any visible human consequence that the people performing them cannot articulate what their work actually produces. Surveys consistently find that a significant percentage of workers privately believe their job makes no meaningful difference to the world. Not that it is difficult or unpleasant, that it is pointless. The human animal spent 300,000 years in an environment where survival itself generated meaning, where the effort of living was woven directly into the fabric of community, family, and continuity. What it did not spend 300,000 years developing was any capacity to tolerate pointlessness. That is not a feature of human psychology. It was never needed. And yet, here we are, building it into the center of the adult workday. Your ancient ancestor would not diagnose any of this. They did not have the frameworks. They did not have the vocabulary. They would simply look around at this extraordinary, unprecedented, technologically miraculous civilization and feel something that they would not have words for either. They would feel sorry for you, not because you have too little, because you have everything except the things the human animal actually needs to feel well. Belonging, purpose, rest, a body used the way it was built to be used, a brain given problems scaled to its actual capacities, a life in which other people need you, and you need them, and everyone knows it. The most advanced consumer society in human history has produced a population that is, by the measures the human animal actually evolved to care about, profoundly impoverished. And the deepest irony is this: your ancestor, the one standing in Times Square, surrounded by screens and light and abundance, looking around at everything with wide, horrified eyes, was in many ways richer than most of the people walking past them. They knew exactly who they were. They knew exactly who needed them. They went to sleep at night, tired in the right way, for the right reasons, surrounded by people whose faces they had known their whole lives. The world they came from was brutal and short and dangerous, but it was built for them, and nothing you are standing in was.